Hey, good morning. Good morning and welcome. Welcome. Great to be here in Detroit. I'm sorry, let me explain for the delay. So, this is a technical issue. We're running this on as a purely of a virtual session. We don't want you to feel a little bit left out. You're back in person. We know you were going to miss your Teams calls, so we thought we'd do you a favor and bring everyone back together on a Teams call. So, there is a little bit of a delay in the sound, so forgive me of that. But let's continue. And as Chris explained earlier, it's all great to have you all here together again. So we're delighted to be back in Detroit. It was a bit of a journey for us to get here, but we made it. So today we're going to be talking about Automotive's green resolution, the path to net zero. Automotive's green revolution is well underway, with sustainability redefining products, manufacturing, and supply chains. New thinking needs to be matched with investment in new technology and equipment for longer-term success. So in this session, we'll discuss some of the collaborative initiatives and strategies that are driving sustainability across the automotive value chain. So today, I'm joined by Alissa Yakali from Honda Development and Manufacturing of America, Jeff Gersdorf from General Motors, sorry, and Kevin Butt from Toyota. I'm also joined by Marcel Fujiki, who's from Kuehne Nagel. So today, great to have you with me. I can see you here, and you guys can see everybody there. So, hi. Let me start by just kicking off the conversation, and first of all, I'd like to ask Alissa to share some thoughts and, of course, some of the strategies that you've been working on there at Honda. I know you've been working on an array of things that across the value chain, so welcome here in Detroit, and great to have you with us.
Thank you so very much, Dean. Sorry I cannot be with you guys. I wanted to right now. Company policy is that I need to talk to you through the computer. So thank you very much for having us and me. So for Honda, we used to be called Honda North America, but for Honda Development and Manufacturing of America, we have been on this CO2 journey for 10 plus years. Started off with 80 suppliers, and now we're working with well over 600. Our supply chain for direct only is my responsibility, and that's about 700 total. We did set a company goal to net zero by 2050. We have our different so that we can start to recognize our suppliers. We are looking for them to reduce by 2% absolute annually, and then that will and the Green Excellence Program is cascading it through the supply chain. And we all know that that is probably the most difficult piece, but working together as an industry and really brainstorming, and with this out of industry, right? I mean, look at all of us sitting here. It's different. We can share our different experiences. So that is my journey. This is a path or a work in progress. We have a sustainability scorecard that takes the framework, that takes these different gold, bronze, silver, and gold, and then rolls it all up. And we feed back to the supplier and say, hey, this is how you're doing. And this is what is going to be shared with the buyers so that we can have conversation when it comes to sourcing. So we really have a comprehensive plan in place. It's just the beginning. The framework was released. The updated scorecard will be released in April or May of 22, and our journey continues. So that is a snapshot of what Honda in North America is doing with the support of our the global mother in Japan. So we are working with our Japan counterparts to then making sure that the mother companies in Japan are supporting their children companies here in North America. So we're making sure that it's a holistic approach. Brilliant. So that is my section. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. That was great. It's just like a normal team call. It's all good. So thank you very much, Alissa. That's great. I think, as we talked about before as well, that communication down the supply chain is really important, right? I mean, and that affects big companies and small companies, right? So ensuring that you can measure and help them score themselves is really important, right? Fabulous. So next up, I'd like to invite Kevin to share some of his thoughts and some of the things that are happening there at Toyota.
Thank you so much. Again, like Alissa, I am sorry I'm not there. I so look forward to the time that we get to be together again and the company allows us to travel. But until then, we'll listen to the echoes and all the things that go on with teams for a while. But just a quick story of where we're coming from. Toyota, since I've been with Toyota a long time, I'd probably like to tell you how long, but that would really tell you how old I am. But we've always been a company that looks towards improvement and reduction of our carbon footprint. But back in 2015, we actually kind of solidified that when we announced our six global challenges. And the first three of those challenges are focused around carbon neutrality. One from the automobile, one from our suppliers, and then from our manufacturing operations. Here recently, we've begun the process of working with our suppliers and working with our suppliers through Supplier Partnership for the Environment, which is an incredible organization that allows us to collaborate across those companies. And if you're not familiar with the Supplier Partnership, I do recommend you kind of look it up because it's a great place where we can collaborate and join without any threats, just to make improvements. So as we began this process late last fall, we actually issued our first pilot program, also using M2030, encouraging a few of our suppliers to test out a system that would allow us to evaluate how quickly we could see their data and see the progress that they're made. But most importantly, share the great stories that each of those suppliers have and some of the reductions that they've been able to do and save money. Because it's always hard to go out and tell your supply base, well, you have these targets and you must meet these targets without providing that support base. So we found it very helpful that we could join in an organization and work with Honda and work with General Motors, because this is a section of we all share a lot of the same suppliers, and the suppliers get really frustrated when they hear from each of us over and over again with different mechanisms by which they are expected to report. So I'm really happy that we've collaborated here and are beginning the process of developing this. Everything you see today is about carbon neutrality, and rightly so. there's a lot of progress that needs to be made. And Toyota's committed that there is, and we believe in climate change and that we're part of the problem and we have a responsibility to move forward and make change. So through that, that commitment, we also just recently reissued in April our green supplier requirements. And within those green supplier requirements, we talk about a plethora of opportunities, including carbon neutrality. We're also concerned about water. We're also concerned about materials and packaging and logistics. How do we continue it? Because it's a great big puzzle. And we have to work together across all those sectors and prioritize to where we can get the biggest bang for the buck I call it the cost of carbon reduction per ton, right? So we have to always evaluate that and determine where that space is to add the most value and share what we learn. And that's what I like so much about, the folks I'm on the phone call with here today, and our ability to have those communications and be able to share the ideas and concepts that will allow us to move in the direction that actually causes effect, because if we as the auto industry collaborate, man, look at the scale that we can actually have influence over in a short period of time. And at the same time, hopefully creating value to the small suppliers, the mom and pop shops, or any other folks that need to, even to the largest tier 1 suppliers. How do we work together to make that happen? So that's what I'm excited about, and I'm really excited that we're able to have this kind of collab. As you said, Jamie, earlier, the collaboration is so key in this space. And it shouldn't be one of those areas that we, everybody's got the headlines out there about what they're doing. And by the way, congratulations, Fred, for the latest announcement of moving your carbon neutrality up to 2025. Outstanding. So now we all got to catch up to you again. So thanks for that challenge. But with that said, I just wanted to say thanks again for having me. And happy to take questions later at the appropriate time. But that's a small picture of where we're at right now.
Great. Thank you, Kevin. I think it's really important, the collaborative element here. And, it's great that, we're able to be here, the 3 OEMs here. You've collaborated and we're talking about it right now. I mean, that's a step forward in itself, right? And all the work that you're doing with your partners is great. We'll talk more about that shortly. Next up, let me invite Fred to share some of the thoughts and some of the things that are happening there at GM.
Thank you for having me on the panel today. I'm in great company. I do have a few slides, if we can share those. To understand GM is to first understand our vision for zero crashes, zero emissions, and zero congestion. And the people are the driving force to make that a reality. From that overall vision that GM and Mary Barra has set forth for our organization, we recognize the importance of climate change, and we really see ourselves at an inflection point. Science tells us that 2020 and the next decade will be pivotal in terms of addressing climate change and limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius or less. My CEO came out last summer and shared GM's ambition to be the most inclusive company in the world. And that also informs our work that we do in sustainability. For us, sustainability is not only the environment, but it's also human rights and ethics. It's deep in the supply chain. And it's important that we look at all elements of environmental, social, and governance when we think about sustainability. So if we go to my next slide, we have seen how inequities can have a detrimental impact on people's lives. So when I talk about sustainability, that is forefront. When I work with our suppliers, we're having those conversations about social sustainability as well. And then, similar to what Kevin mentioned earlier, we recognize our scale and we recognize our role and the importance that we have in shaping the future and working with our supplier partners to make that a reality. I do have one last slide, a couple helper slides along the way. Some of our recent goals, and to Kevin's point, we have come out with a update to our renewable energy goal that we're very proud of. But I wanted to share today that we have an ambition to become carbon neutral in our global products and operations by 2040. That for our light duty vehicles, we aspire to eliminate tailpipe emissions by 2035. And then very importantly, and we would encourage others to take this challenge as well, for us was to root this ambition in science-based targets and leveraging SBTI in our pursuit of carbon neutrality. So that shares a little bit about GM at a corporate level. I lead the sustainability and human rights work within our supply chain. And it's so critical that we continue to grow our aspirations, challenge ourselves to bold goals. For GM, 20% of our emissions come from either the products that we buy or the mode of shipment and transportation of those products, and then our finished goods, our vehicles as well. So supply chain logistics has a really big role to play in carbon reduction. When I talk with suppliers, I like to stress the importance of innovation. That for many of us, we have these carbon neutrality goals, we have bold commitments, and at times, for some of us, the path to get to these places is not completely laid out yet. And in order to get there, we need to bring innovation into the discussion. We need to set these bold goals, and then we need to have innovation help get us there. We also need to move with a sense of urgency. So climate change isn't going away, and we can't waste any time. For a lot of my suppliers, they're just taking the beginning steps in terms of sustainability. And I know Alissa and Kevin mentioned the role that their organizations play in helping with the how to get there. So we do want to set ambitious goals. We want to do that collaboratively with our supply base, but then we want to be able to be part of that discussion on how to get there, because ambitious goals without that path, it doesn't result in really good outcomes. And then lastly, I would touch on the partnerships that are critical, not only supplier partnerships that Kevin mentioned, that all of our organizations are a part of, but individual partnerships with GM and our suppliers in bringing innovation forward, new products, new ideas, new ways of thinking. We're always looking to innovate, and that's what it's going to take to make the future that I think we all want to live in.
Great, thank you, Fred. That's incredible. Completely wholeheartedly agree with you. There is innovation is going to help to drive this, but there is a real need for urgency right now, right? For us to be able to move the dial on this, and the partnership that you have, and of course the work that you've been doing with the supplier partnership for the environment, which is where you've come together, has been really important, right? And I think that's helped you drive things forward. And maybe we could just touch on that a little bit. How has that helped you come together to define those common goals and those common strategies? Because ultimately, I know when we talked, it's always difficult, and when you've got Toyota asking supplier for 1 to do one thing, you got Honda saying another, you got GM saying another, you got Ford saying another. Everybody's getting confused. Everybody's working to different pathways and different goals. We need, and for you to come together and help that. How has this partnership helped you do that and drive that forward?
I guess I'll start. One of the biggest benefits. Well, first of all, I think the people that we have. When I get to work with people like Fred and Alissa and others that are in supplier partnership, that's a big advantage as well. We have a common need, a common goal. Supplier partnership allows us to have the platform that we can meet and we can talk in a free space along with our supply base that allows that open communication to begin to result in actual steps forward. It's not just about let's give a little bit of talk to this. We actually are able then to put projects on the ground. And I think what we've seen is through the packaging guidelines and what we're talking about in this space of carbon neutrality, these are all things that we're working on and creating common definitions, which I think is also so important, so that we're all working on the same playing field with the same definitions so that there's no confusion about what it is we're actually trying to meet at the end of the day. And I think that's one of the biggest benefits that I see out of that organization.
To add to what Kevin said, what's great about the guidelines also is that it still gives the OEMs the flexibility to do as they need. So it's general enough that Honda can say 2% absolute annually, but that may not be the same target that is needed for General Motors or for Toyota or other partners. So we definitely, and really we actually challenge our suppliers to set their own. So if they're setting their own and it's able to even be above and beyond what the different OEMs are asking, that's even better. So we definitely want our suppliers to have a common understanding, but then still there's enough flexibility that it works for all of us in the OEM space. Really, the beginning of this guideline came with me starting in the M2030 world, sharing that with my counterparts. And even when you're feeding into this one system, suppliers don't want to do extra work. We don't want to do extra work. We don't have enough people power. So what we really needed was this guideline. So then that guideline can feed into this program as we start to develop those different KPIs and the different needs for each of the OEMs. And the suppliers can, again, cascade that through their supply chain.
All great points. I'm trying to think of things Alissa and Kevin haven't covered already. What I would say is the supplier partnership platform allows us to build relationships, first of all. We've got to have trust with, these relationships and understanding, and then that creates the platform for how do we move forward together and what can we collaborate on. I think back to the earliest conversations I had with my suppliers in regard to sustainability, and they said unequivocally, Fred, don't go it alone. Whatever you do, please, for our sake, don't do that. And supplier partnerships allows, a platform for us to have these discussions in a safe way, and has been very beneficial.
Yeah, I think it's a fabulous opportunity for you to come together and really appreciate our relationship with the supplier partnership for the environment as well, and us being able to work with you through that partnership as well. Really appreciate that. I think part of when we talk about communicating with partners, there's clearly an element of you need to understand key data points that allow you to act, but also to educate the stakeholders as well. So, tell us a little bit more about how you're using data and then sharing that information so that, we can start to see where we need to make those significant reductions in CO2, but also, how do you go about setting those kind of goals as well, right? Data is going to key to that. So how and where are you pulling all this data and of course sharing that to to get the insights.
Well, I can tell you, Jamie, you have hit a hot button for me. Who wants to make business decisions based on bad data, right? And how do we gather that and assure that that we are getting that high quality data? Well, M2030 is helping us with that as an organization, and they do a lot of validation, verification of that data, and internally, we've opened our eyes a little bit within Toyota. We're a global company, and I think not to take a shot at my other partners here, but we're the #1 automaker in the world right now, and that's not a good thing sometimes, right? I mean, the bigger you are, that whole communication quality thing is a struggle point. So we're getting better and enabling us to create that concise ask with those common definitions that I talked about earlier, that we're all on that same page, and allowing us then to gather that data in a consistent and timely manner to be able to make business decisions and set forth realistic targets, not only internally but externally to our supply base. I don't want to expect our suppliers to do anything that we're not doing, and doing it with a clarity and with purpose. To me, that's important. And one of the things I hear from our supply groups all the time is, well, what are you going to do with that data when you actually get it, right? And so, that's the clarity that's needed, and, not asking data for data's sake, but how's that going to help us make those business decisions along the way that add value and actually achieve the target that we're searching for? That's the key to this.
So along with Kevin, what's what he's saying, within these guidelines, and I'm going to read this verbatim, a comprehensive CO2 reduction plan should be part of an overall environmental sustainability policy within each supplier company. So we really are putting out there in that guideline what Kevin is saying. Within the M2030 platform, and that's where we have the data collection, we have the suppliers putting in ideas to help reduce. One of the features of this platform is that there's a 10-year plan that in the Honda world we are requiring suppliers to complete. It is definitely a working plan. It doesn't have to be stagnant. 10 years, we don't know what 10 years looks like. But with Kevin's point, this way we can see what our suppliers are looking at over the next 10 years, be able to plan with them, and then if it's not looking strong enough, then what do I as an OEM leader need to do to support those suppliers? So the guideline that is out there supports what Kevin says, and then the platform that we're looking at in North America and socializing in Europe is also supporting what Kevin has said.
This is a great question. For GM, data is critical in understanding our supply base, in driving sourcing decisions. For us, CDP, the Carbon Disclosure Project, is critical in understanding where our suppliers are at, and we ask for suppliers to complete that annually. We've also onboarded EcoVadis as a platform that is allowing us to understand supplier sustainability at a deeper level than just environmental. We start to look at ethics, labor, human rights, sustainable procurement programs that our own suppliers have. And the combination of CDP and EcoVadis give us a great lens to see where our suppliers are at, how they're improving, and the areas that they need support in.
I think, CDP do a great job. I've worked with them in the past, and they've done a great job at bringing all this information together and sharing it with all the key stakeholders, particularly in the finance community as well, right? Because now it's becoming an issue for the finance community as well. What are you investing in? Ensuring that they're driving that forward as well, right? So as we said, it's a collaborative effort, right? And I think even everybody here in the room and watching virtually as well, right? It's time for everybody to come together and start to really take some of those steps that we need to take. It's a challenging time right now, right? We're dealing with a number of various challenges, operational issues in the supply chain, financial issues, But how do we make that step, right? When you're dealing with all of these operational and financial issues, how do we move that dial to start without putting too much pressure? Because, as we talked about, some of the companies in your supply chain, are smaller and, less nimble and less agile to be able to meet some of these things. So how do we help and how do we come together to be able to drive this forward?
So I would like to comment on that, please. A lot of what we are doing in this space, well, all of it, is not regulatory. So I like to say that my team gives my suppliers the best customer service we absolutely can. I don't have any sticks. And if I did, I don't want to use them. So I only use carrots. And within those carrots, it's the education. It's us feeding back to the suppliers to say, look, this is how well you're doing in all of these different areas from our scorecard. This is our 3 years we've been releasing this scorecard to the suppliers, and it's truly transparency. It's going to be used more in the future, but they've really appreciated to say, oh, thank you for giving me feedback on all of this data that I've been sending you. So those are carrots. And with those carrots, we've really built a strong relationship with our suppliers, and asking them to do things because we're doing it together has been beneficial. And of course, I love my job, so it's been absolutely lovely.
We talked about earlier the how in the discussion and how do we support our suppliers. We've got supplier conferences that we do regularly, I would say almost quarterly right now. We've got another one coming up on November 3rd and 4th. And our November 3rd conference will be an energy conference, and that will be open to the public. So we're increasing the scope. And those conferences are meant to be educational. We do have monthly energy webinars where suppliers can join and learn from experts in the field. We also have a program of virtual energy treasure hunts where we can collaborate with suppliers. And in the era of COVID, we haven't been able to do that on site, but we do that virtually, where we look for energy efficiency opportunities at a supplier location. It's site specific. So I guess we could go on and on. I want to give time for Kevin as well. I know that Alissa and others have developed frameworks and guides to support suppliers. We've done the same. And it's very important that we have that foundational educational material out there for suppliers. In some cases, in many cases, our suppliers don't have dedicated sustainability folks on staff. So helping distill down this huge topic of sustainability into actionable items and condensing the information down to the critical pieces that one would need to know to act is very important to our strategy.
Yeah, I don't know that I have much more to say to that. You guys covered that really well. I guess at the end of the day, it comes down to progress, right? The education, the collaboration, working together as a whole, but at the end of the day, we have to show progress. And to me, the accountability of the auto industry is because we are such a big part of the economy and a big part of the issues. As you've seen all the commitments that have come out of the auto industry, where we want to be in the future, I don't want to get into the argument about all electric vehicles and whether that's the total right way to go, but because it also has its problems. To me, what they just said about education and collaboration, using supplier partnership, using M2030, and collecting clear and concise data for purpose, we will see progress. And to me, it's about how fast we can make that progress, and the more we work together and collaborate, I think we can get there at a rapid pace. To me, that's the important part, because we all have that common goal, and that common goal is getting a reduction into our space of carbon.
Because I've been working in this space with the suppliers for a long while, 10 plus years, I can tell you they're ready. 10 years ago, no, it was definitely a different story, but now they are ready. And because of suppliers partnership and coming together and giving them these tools, Kevin, I think that it's going to take off. And I think it's going to take off like, I don't want to say wildfire because that's not good, but it's going to take off nicely.
Great. Well, let's, as we're talking about partnerships, let's bring Marcel into the conversation. Kuehne Nagel are, of course, one of the partners for many companies here. One of the sponsors here, and of course, you've been doing some great work, Marcel. I know we've had conversations about a lot of this carbon reduction work and that you've been doing at Kuehne Nagel. So, why don't you explain to us some of the things that you've been working on? What's important for you from a service provider perspective, and how you're pushing the dial on this as well.
Okay, thank you, Nimish, for having me and inviting me. And thanks to all of you out there and in Detroit for joining our session and listening to all of us and myself now. Yeah, well, I'm the only supplier here, I think. So there is a bit of pressure I feel at the moment on myself, and I try to grab the carrots that Alissa is hanging in front of me. So I prepared as well a PowerPoint as well. And if we could share that one, then that would be great. Then I would guide you a bit through our thoughts and the targets, Alissa, as well, that we are having as Kuehne Nagel. So I basically developed that slide not knowing that Alissa would touch on targets and expecting suppliers having targets. But so I'm even more happy that even on my first slide, there are our targets. So within the Kuehne Nagel, already mid of 2019, we announced publicly that for our direct emissions and the energy we purchase, so our scope 1 and 2 emissions, we will become carbon neutral by the end of 2020. So that was end of last year, and we achieved this. So to be fair, we have to say that a bit of this amount you see there, 311,000 tons, we had to offset. So there was a bit of offsetting there as well. But when it comes to the purchasing of energy, we shifted our entire purchase of global energy to one provider that is now providing us globally with green energy. So that is possible. So that is a huge step forward, I think. When it comes to scope 3, so our indirect emission, that is normally our suppliers, so the steamship and vessel providers or our airlines, we said that by the end of 2030, we want to be net zero carbon. That is way earlier than IATA, for example, announced aviation to become net zero carbon. That's 2050 at the moment, and normally way earlier than most of our customers are trying to achieve the net zero aim. If you see the number, then it's quite impressive, because we had to realize that more than 90% of our emissions within Kuehne Nagel are scope 3, so are indirect. And if you know, please go to the next slide. Then we'll dive a bit deeper into air logistics. And what does it mean for us? Because I represent air logistics, and unfortunately, I'm the one who is now basically in charge for bringing up the concept, the strategy, and walking the path into the end of 2030 and the net zero carbon. So we talked already a lot about data and visibility and the target. And for us, that is the first area as well we focus on. So it's all about data. Fred mentioned that around 20% of the carbon emissions are coming from the products they purchase or the supply chain. So we are now at the moment really heavily squeezing our carrier partners to suppliers with real data on the lane and the aircraft type used. So we really know what the real emissions have been. Because we realize that all the concepts that are out there and all the theories how to calculate emissions, they tend to be too high in the result. So all the emissions we are normally reporting back to you, they tend to be too high if you know the real emissions that these aircrafts are emitting, which was quite important for us as well. But nonetheless, we realized within the business unit Air Logistics that our emissions just coming from the flight movement are accounting for more than 95% of our overall carbon emissions. And that is what we are now focusing on, bringing down these flight emissions. That is basically the key to success. And then Fred mentioned that one as well. Based on the visibility we are now having, we defined our target, and we used science-based targets for that as well. So we joined the Science-Based Targets Initiative in 2019, and we now became a full member in 2021, just a couple of months ago, where our targets have been basically cleared through the Science-Based Targets Initiative. And we are now reviewing twice a year these targets. Because one thing is for sure, end of 2030, if we are just going for science-based targets and we would exclude offsetting, we won't make it. So even in 2030, we still need to offset a certain portion of our emissions that we are having. But I come to this in a second. But now more important, and Alissa, Fred, and Kevin touched on that, how are we achieving this? And the how is, if we look into the second, third, and the fourth area. The second area is the area of really reduction and avoidance. And there we are saying, and that's basically first a no-brainer, we need to reduce the weight that we are getting into the air. And that you can achieve by reducing the paper you're sending. So digitalization is the buzzword. Packaging was mentioned before as well by Fred and Kevin. And the pelletizing. So as an example there, what we did was we replaced all our plastic wrapping that we are normally doing when we have finally packed a pellet. And we replaced that by a biodegradable foil. And that is even lighter than the one we used before, so saving a couple of thousands of tons of CO2 annually. We offer our clients as well to have a look into the routes and the carriers they are using for transporting goods. Because we realize that if you take a different route or different carriers with newer aircraft models or with freighters, because freighters tend to emit less carbon than passenger planes. That is due to the theoretical model of emissions that is behind it, that you can save CO2 emissions there as well. For sure, not forgetting that there are other factors, just sustainability. So there is, of course, the transportation time, cost, and the reliability of the carrier or the route you're using, playing a role there as well. Then we are offering alternative transportation modes. So we know, all of you know, sea freight is cheaper than air, sure. So whatever can go on sea, we think will go on sea. But in between sea and air, you have the combined transportation. So sea air or air sea. And we enhanced that product over the past years and really newly shaped it. And it's now during COVID times and during specifically nowadays, the tight capacity situation, a very, very good and successful product. So sea air or air sea is definitely something to look into. We further support innovation, and Alissa mentioned innovation as well. We are looking into ways to basically replace aircraft movements for certain lanes or routes or on a certain stretch of the journey. So at the moment we are running a trial in Kenya, for example, with airships, and these airships are picking up flowers from the production site and bringing them to the airport. We are involved in a couple of drone pilots as well. But with the drones, I'm not a real believer into the drone technology because it's still too shaky when it comes to rain and gusty winds. And last not least, and quite important for us on the way forward, and specifically for our 2030 target, is the usage of sustainable aviation fuel. And I have one more slide on the SAF offering as well later on for those of you who are not that familiar with SAF. Third area is the area of offsetting. So whatever is left over, we need to offset. We believe in offsetting. I know that there is a certain touch of greenwashing behind the offsetting. So for us, it's pretty clear that we need to ensure that whatever we do, all the projects we invest into, they need to be really green, sustainable, and well audited. So we are even thinking of having our own audit team that we are sending around the world and basically auditing these projects that we are investing into. And fourth, and I think that was mentioned by my co-panelists already as well, we believe truly in partnership, cooperation, the initiatives. So we are a member of CST. CST is Clean Skies for Tomorrow. It's an initiative umbrella by the World Economic Forum, the WEF, and they put forward certain policies. For example, one of the latest papers was a recommendation for the EU, how to paint the path towards carbon neutrality 2030 and SAF. Another one we just launched was an ambition of, I think, roughly 50 companies to have 10% of the fuel used in 2030 being sustainable aviation fuel. So that is one of the latest. So CST is for us in air logistics one of the leading initiatives, I would say. And it's not just Kuehne Nagel, but a couple of other forwarders as well that are in the group as well. So then just a word or a minute on sustainable aviation fuel. I don't know whether you're all aware of sustainable aviation fuel and the background of this. So I hope you can all see the slide right now, because I just see our lovely faces at the moment. Great. Okay, so what is sustainable aviation fuel? If you move to the right side, in a nutshell, it's basically, and it sounds pretty simple. You are producing, in an ideal world, fuel out of biomass or even out of the air and certain things that we have flying around. So in theory, whatever CO2 is emitted during the flight was previously absorbed by the feedstock you used to produce this kerosene. So at the moment, the only really commercially available method to produce the sustainable aviation fuel is the so-called HEFA method. That stands for hydroprocessed esters and fatty acids. That is basically using tallow, so the slaughtering waste material, or used cooking oil. So McDonald's, Burger King, used cooking oil, fried oil. They are then refurbished, and in certain refineries, they are processed becoming SAF. The nice thing of SAF is it can be used in the existing jet engines. So we don't need new aircrafts for this, but we can use the existing engines. And I think you all know how long normally the life cycle of an aircraft is. So even though we will see the first hydrogen engines or hydrogen planes flying in 2035, let's say until we have 1,000 of them really flying in the air, it will take at least 15 to 20 years. So SAF is the way forward, at least for the next 20 to 30 years, to really bring carbon emissions down. You can even blend or mix the normal fossil jet fuel kerosene with SAF. So the maximum allowed quantity to blend is 50%. So there is a 50 to 50 blend possible. But normally at the moment, we still see that the max is 30%. It reduces the greenhouse gas emissions normally by 75%. Depends a bit on the feedstock you're using. So tallow is bringing us 75% carbon emission reductions, up to 94%. Used cooking oil, 94% we have seen already. And for customers then telling us, yeah, but listen, it's 75%, so I can still not become net zero carbon. We are saying, yeah, well, you can overcompensate a liter of jet fuel kerosene burned with more SAF you buy. So if you basically replace 1 liter of kerosene with 1.3 liters of SAF, you are then really net zero carbon. And that is the secret a bit of SAF, and that is absolutely the way forward. Please go to the last slide. Then you see what we have done so far, and Alissa was asking for actions of the suppliers. So that is our action so far in 2021. We committed ourselves for 12.8 now since yesterday, 12.8 milliliters of SAF. You see on the right side what you can fly with this 12.8 milliliters of SAF. So it's basically 28 times a Dreamliner around the world, or 1.6 billion doses of COVID-19 Moderna vaccines transported from Brussels to Singapore. It's the largest commitment so far we know of any logistics provider. And the nice thing is we purchased that one from various airlines, and we have it now in-house. So we can offer it to clients. So whenever you're coming, regardless where you are and regardless what route you're asking for, we can supply you with the SAF. So we can already right now, in a minute, when Alissa is telling me what she wants to fly, I can tell her, yes, that is net zero carbon. So you can really achieve this immediately. So I'm sitting at the moment in my head office at virtually 12.7 milliliters of sustainable aviation fuel, which we think is the way forward. And that is basically ending my small slot in what suppliers are trying to achieve, to grab the carrot that is hanging there and to gain more business. So we are ready. As you can see, we have our targets. It's an ambitious target, but we are doing utmost to achieving this. Maybe to add, last word, Monday we announced a partnership with Lufthansa, and we are now supporting the first ever synthetical production of sustainable aviation fuel, grabbing CO2 out of the atmosphere and mixing that or blending this with hydrogen, and then you can create crude oil as well, synthetic crude oil that is then refined into kerosene as well. So that's the future.
That's fabulous. Thank you, Marcel. That's really great. As we talked in the past as well, some really great initiatives there, from the light weighting that you're doing to reduce the weight to the new fuels and new dynamics around that. Really fabulous to hear that you're pushing this forward. I think, this is when we talk about, these kind of incremental changes. We've talked about a lot about kind of reducing emissions, but clearly there's a lot of other areas that we need to focus on as well, right? Waste management, energy management. Kevin, you mentioned water. Water's the new gold, right? As we talked about before. So, how are you combining all of these things? Clearly the weight reduction helps to reduce waste on those kind of things. How are you moving the dials on some of those other areas as well that ultimately help to reduce overall kind of CO2 emissions as well, right?
Shall I go first? I mean, for us, as mentioned, 95% are the flights. So we concentrate a lot on the flight. But having said this, of course, we're doing a lot of this kind of obvious work to reduce our direct emissions, like replacing all the light bulbs with LED lights or putting solar panels on all the roofs of our warehouses. So this is ongoing as well. We are replacing now the duty cars of our managers with electric vehicles as well. So good for the OEMs that have electric offerings, of course, in their portfolio. But this is what we are doing as well. So we are always open, we are listening, and we are learning as well through web others or from others what they are doing to reduce our own direct emissions, of course, as well. But as mentioned before, our main target needs to be reducing the indirects, the scope 3, because they are the chunk of our emissions.
Quite frankly, I don't think you can separate out hardly any of this. I mean, one has impact on the other, and they're so intertwined in so many ways. So I think we have to continue to focus. And if you think about biodiversity, even biodiversity, if affects water, it's and climate, and so taking care of ecosystems has its own values to it, and that are just intertwined. So I think we need to continue to, we can't forget. We can't just say, I want to go carbon neutral. If we say that, we're missing some of the other aspects that are out there that we have impacts on. So we have to continue to look at this in a holistic value as well.
Alyssa, Fred, you want to add to that?
Yeah, hard to follow.
I was going to say, they did great. They did great.
For us, it's putting people at the center of everything that we do. And when Kevin talks about you can't separate it, you can't. When you look at environmental sustainability, social governance, it's about people. It's about the future that we want to create for people. It's about the current state that we want to make better for people. And all of it comes back to that. So just echo all the comments that it is one, challenge, and that when we try to separate it, we run into other issues.
Great. Alyssa, anything else to add on that?
The only thing is within my group or my team, we call it the pieces of sustainability. And our logo, puzzle pieces that form a circle. And exactly what Fred said is that if that circle is broken, so that's our logo. And we believe exactly what you had said, Fred. It's all connected.
That's great. I know we've taken up a little bit more time than we had. I think we started a little bit late, but let me just finish on one last question. And ask you, personally, professionally, how would you like to see things evolve? And, what are the top 2, maybe 3 priorities for you moving forward? Let's start with Alyssa.
Okay, so my top priority is to get more suppliers engaged in the M2030 platform for that environmental piece of sustainability. If I can get them on that platform, my small and mighty team can be even more engage, because that organization has amazing customer support. The platform is doing what we need to hopefully lessen the burden on the suppliers and incorporate other OEMs in the journey. So that is my main focus over the next couple of years, get those suppliers on the platform.
Kevin?
Yeah, I couldn't, I think Jamie was speaking. For me, it's about starting the journey. So if a supplier has not started the journey, it's about taking that first step. And then right along with that, the second priority is moving with a sense of urgency and speed. So time is not our friend. I know we've talked about that. And it's critical that we first take that step and then through a partnership, move quickly to action and changing for the better.
Great. Kevin, do you want to go next?
I think if I had the wish and the top priority would be, it's continuing the education of people, that they're able to make an educated decision when it comes to the next steps that they personally want to make, whether that's a business or whether that's somebody in the, trying to decide what they want to do to their personal journey in this space. So education's key to that. And, and if I had the second one, it would be, raising water to the same level as we talk about carbon neutrality. It's kind of like one and the same. They're related. They have common impacts. So, I think that to me, we have to raise the bar, and that comes with that education piece that I said earlier. So that would be my two areas.
Thank you. Yeah, and I agree with you on the water. I say water, you say water.
I probably very well.
But yeah, I think it's extremely valuable we start to look at that element of side of things as well, And Marcel, let's wrap up with your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that is now easy for me because all that was mentioned already is already 6, so I can even add 2 more from my side. So whatever was mentioned, yes, absolutely agree. And I would say as well and share, education is very important. We see on our side as well, whenever customers are approaching us, that the education level is still quite low when it comes to specifically carbon emission that kicks in immediately, like sustainable aviation fuel. So we need to do a lot of, and it's always taking a long time until we see something kicking off. I share absolutely the water piece as well. And if I could say something specific, then I would wish for that governments are putting more subsidies and incentives onto sustainable aviation fuel and are promoting the new technologies. That is what we need to see, because SAF, let's face it, is way too expensive still. That really there is a huge swing towards this aviation method for basically near future. So it needs to become a lot cheaper, and I think we need to have the government backing for this.
Great. Well, thank you. I think there's some great priorities there. It's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you for joining us. I know you joined us virtually, but what you haven't seen is everybody's been here riveted to listening to what you're saying. So I think we appreciate that everybody sitting here patiently listening to what you're saying, and of course everybody watching virtually as well. So thank you very much for taking the time to join us on stage. Really looking forward to working more with you moving forward, and of course moving forward on this is as you said, Fred, the urgency, the time is now. We need to drive this forward and start taking action. So thank you very much again. I think for us, we're going to take a break now for 45 minutes or so. There'll be another session here in the main stage, which will be talking about optimize to thrive, redefining freight network management excellence. And we'll also have a couple of breakout rooms, ideas labs, one which will be focusing on technology, enabling automotive packaging to think outside of the box. and the other ideas lab, which will be looking at finished vehicle logistics, raising the quality, and that'll be in the rooms outside of the main hall, in the Garnet and the Sapphire rooms. There'll be signposts there to direct you to where you need to go. Once again, thank you, Alissa. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Marcel. A great pleasure having you join us today. Thank you very much.